like to call this meeting to order. Mr. Walsh, would you lead us in the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sunshine Law Statement, all requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act have been met for this meeting of the Board of Education of the Borough of Oradell. Notice of this meeting was filed with the Record and Town News and all persons requesting such notice. Mr. Darian, would you read the mission statement?
Sure. The Oradell Public School District is dedicated to the ongoing pursuit of educational excellence through comprehensive, innovative curriculum and instruction. The district is committed to providing opportunities for social, emotional, and academic discovery to foster curiosity, courage, and character. Our goal is to prepare our students to become lifelong learners who are self-directed, resilient, productive, responsible citizens.
Thank you. Roll call.
Mrs. Needham?
Here.
Mr. Griffin? Here. Mrs. Levy?
Here.
Mrs. Norian? Mrs. Shapiro?
Here.
Mrs. Walker?
Here.
Mr. Walsh?
Here,
Mr. Darian?
Here.
Mrs. Nichols?
Here, open to the public for agenda items only. If you are joining us via Zoom, please raise your digital hand. Moving forward, obviously the mind, we're going to push off until after, I believe, Worlds, until we have the final, right? Okay. So we'll move to the superintendent's report.
None at this time.
Business administrators report.
I'd just like to report that this year, the New Jersey School Boards Association workshop is going to be virtual once again. So the dates for the virtual workshop is going to be October 26th through Thursday, October 28th. And access to the workshop will be available 24/7 for 30 days after the event. Also coming up is the New Jersey School Board November elections. This year it's going to be November 2nd. And the deadline to have your nominating petition in is by 4 p.m. July 26th to the county clerk. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Review of minutes, May 12th. Any questions? Please contact Mr. Marmara. We have approval of April 28th. So I have a motion.
I move that we approve the meeting minutes of April 28th.
A second.
Second by Mr. Griffin. Any questions? Call the question.
Mrs. Needham?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin? Yes. Mrs. Levy?
Yes.
Mrs. Shapiro?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes,
Mr. Darian?
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols?
Yes. Buildings and grounds, Mr. Darian.
Yes, I'd like to introduce item B1 for facility use.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Any questions?
I have a question.
Mr. Darian?
John, the use is for the NPR. Is that rooms A through C, or is that, should we include that on this agenda, or is it just all of NPR?
So
Or B through D, or I can't recall.
let me just check.
It's A and B.
I have it in the contract here. Yeah, so it's A and B.
Okay, so I'd like to amend this to include just NPR A and B.
I'll second it.
Any questions? Call the question.
Mrs. Needham?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin? Yes. Mrs. Levy?
Yes.
Mrs. Shapiro?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes,
Mr. Darian?
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols?
Yes. Curriculum. Mrs. Norian is not here. Mrs. Levy, anything going on in curriculum?
No.
Okay. Finance technology, Mrs. Shapiro.
Have no report. I'd like to take a moment before I introduce the items to call your attention to item D7 and just express a heartfelt thank you to Mr. Tenorpal and New York Life, who made a very generous donation to the school in the amount of $1,000. Really appreciate their generosity and thinking of us.
I'll second it.
Hold on. And I'd like to make a motion to approve items D1 through D10.
I'll second it too.
Thank you.
Any questions? Call the question?
Mrs. Needham,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin? Yes. Mrs. Levy,
Yes.
Mrs. Shapiro,
Yes.
Mrs. Walker,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh,
Yes.
Mr. Darian,
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes. Delegate report, Mr. Walsh.
I have nothing to report.
Personnel, Mrs. Walker.
Yes, I would like to present F1.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Walsh. Any questions? Call the question?
Mrs. Needham,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin? Yes. Mrs. Levy,
Yes.
Mrs. Shapiro,
Yes.
Mrs. Walker,
Yes,
Mr. Walsh,
Yes.
Mr. Darian,
Yes.
Mrs. Nichols.
Yes. Policy, Mrs. Levy.
Yes, we had a policy meeting this past Monday. In your next board packet, you will be receiving for first review something about electronic signature that I think was potentially left off previously. That's coming right straight from New Jersey School Boards for you to review. We also reviewed the residency policy. We discussed removing the foreign exchange students language that was put in there. We noticed that no other elementary schools have that. So we will be making that recommendation, and all the information will be in your board packet for review and first review at the next board meeting.
Thank you. Let's skip to COVID task force.
No updates since the last meeting.
Open to the public. If you're joining us on Zoom, please raise your digital hand. Moving forward, any old or new business? Mr. Walsh?
Let Greg go.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Walsh.
I want to talk about we passed last meeting, teachers to help the children over the summer in July. And in looking at the test results from the Lincoln, I'd like to ask the administration to try to, is there another Lincoln test happening or about to happen?
Yes, we currently have Lincoln C right now. And that is not the only program they run this summer.
So will we have the results in June? Because I'd like to add the children who do not pass, I'd like to add them or ask the administration to add them to the help that the other children are getting in the summer, in July. Because the numbers that I'm looking at in this Lincoln, and hopefully, I'm talking about January. If I'm looking at January, third grade, 40 out of 86 didn't pass. 49 out of 108 in the fourth grade didn't pass. 67 out of 105 in the fifth grade didn't pass. 46 out of 101 in the sixth grade didn't pass. Now, I'm sure that was 6 months ago. This was January. The numbers are smaller. I don't know if they're all special ed students. I don't think they are. But I would like to ask the administration to look into maybe helping those students that don't pass the Linkit test, because we're not going to have the standardized test till fall. So that's the only thing we'll be able to go by for our district goals.
Mrs. Levy, did you want to say something?
He mentioned it, I didn't know what results he was looking at. It's
I'm looking at
the January.
I'm looking
Shapiro?
at what was handed out from the curriculum committee.
Mrs. Shapiro?
So I can't speak for administration, but I know having children who have done Linkit in recent years, I don't think we're expecting them all to pass, or most of them to pass in January. It was my understanding that with the Linkit, they are kind of quizzing them, testing them on the material for the entire year. So when they get tested in January, they've only learned content from September, October, November, December. So they actually are, I mean, it sounds odd, but they're getting tested on some things that they have not learned before. And I think that they don't get the full, so it tells them, okay, well, we did cover this in October and these 4 students didn't get that concept, so we can go over that again. But I don't think we should be upset that they didn't, that many kids didn't do that well. I think that the final result is the benchmarks during the year, and then this, am I getting that right? It's the final one where they see, okay, now you've had the full year of instruction. How did we do? So
I think we need to wait till we get the June results.
I think, yeah,
Let's just see what happens.
and then you can have that conversation of what needs to happen over the summer, but not everybody's supposed to pass in January. That's all I'm saying. Okay.
And I believe it's given more than twice, or 3 times, right? Like sometime like in September, around there, and January. And normally we would have waited till later, we're testing kids a month before school ends because we need the data for a different intervention.
Mr. Griffin?
I'm wondering if Mr. Walsh's thought process on preparing, there's a lot that goes into staffing for the summer, and if we wait for administration to even consider this until those results come in June, we may be behind the 8 ball on our ability to staff for the kids that might need it. I don't know if there's an in-between that they could look into now.
Can you look into that, Mrs. Longo? Mrs. Walker?
Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe part of Linkit is also for diagnostic, so that the children that didn't, so you're testing in January, so kids that didn't do well on the areas they should have done well, the teacher can then supplement those areas for those particular kids too.
And just a follow-up, I think generally the teachers know who's struggling. I'm not sure that the number would be that different in June. They should have a good handle of where they're at, but also I think not everybody who's offered a summer program takes it. It's not required. So that's another, something about staffing. So.
Any other old or new business, Mr. Griffin?
Just want to say a big thank you and congratulations to the PTA on their Around the World event that happened this weekend. It was incredible. It was really great for the kids. They had a great time. And, also shout out to the staff that were there. Multiple staff members from the school were there working hard. And, the kids just had the biggest smiles being there and having that conversation about diversity and celebrating the cultures within our community was wonderful. I'm very proud that it happened, and I was glad to be a part of it. So thank you, PTA.
Mrs. Walker?
Just 2 things. I neglected to say during my personnel report that we have the administration has been meeting and interviewing numerous teachers, looking at resumes first, over
160.
160 resumes and going through them and working diligently for looking into the assistant principal. And the second thing, this is just kind of an aside, but I give a kudos, and I mentioned this to Ms. Bozios, to the Ramos family. I live on Oradell Avenue, almost down by Grant. That's a mile from the school. Most every day, I see Mrs. Ramos, her two boys, and pushing a baby carriage in the morning, in the rain or windy weather, going to school and coming back from school. So I signaled her the other day, and she probably thought, who's this crazy lady, to congratulate her and say, isn't this great that you're doing this? You're walking with the kids. And I just thought it was really refreshing to see that. So a shout out to the Ramos family.
Any other old or new business? Mr. Darian?
Yes, I just wanted to bring up again Zoom. Recent developments since our last board meeting, the Riverdale Board of Ed has decided, I believe in September, they're no longer going to be offering the virtual option. They're going to be not participating with Teams anymore. So just something else to consider. We pay for our webinar only version, $1,400 a year for subscription. Our full version, the educational version, is $10,400 a year, just to have the virtual option. And as we go to no virtual instruction, I'm sure that there might be opportunities to reduce or possibly eliminate Zoom. And I'm not making any recommendations other than I just want us to think about it. So.
Anyone else?
Just, I could be wrong. I was told they go all in person June 7th. Is that wrong?
I wasn't sure on the date. Is it earlier?
It may not be
I
September.
didn't watch it. I've heard it was June 7th. That's all.
I read, and it wasn't the official minutes, that it was
Right.
not the official minutes.
Okay.
but that it was this in September. but
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay.
There was a lot of different information.
All right. We'll find out.
Mrs. Levy?
I'm sorry about that, but while we're talking about the Zoom, and thinking about making that decision, at this point, I was also curious to see if anything was gonna be coming from the governor or if anything. So I don't know I'm sure that Jeff would let us know if something came, but just putting it on his radar. So to see if there are any changes coming from the state on that, that would eliminate our opportunity to even make that decision versus making that decision on our own.
Mr. Griffin?
Another thing we could think about doing is, since we should have registrations for all these Zooms, we could reach out to any of the folks that have attended through Zoom and get a sense of how they feel about the importance of keeping it. I think it would be a good data point for us to consider. Obviously, the state changes if it is something that is no longer legal, that makes sense. But I think it'd be a nice data point to find out from the users of it if they feel it's important to keep or not.
I think it would be nice if we would also promote our YouTube channel. I'm a big fan of it. I even go back just to criticize myself. And there's not many people who subscribe. So, we're still going to maintain that. So we'll have a video recording. It's just that it won't be, you won't be able to participate, via Zoom. You'd have to participate in person if you had something to say during the meeting. But I think if we were to poll, past participants, we should also just, publicize the fact that we have a YouTube channel, and would that suffice? Because I do it also with mayor and council and other land use boards.
I have a question. How many people, like not in this room, are on this evening?
6.
6?
3 parents, 3 staff.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, and I don't know if this would be appropriate, but last year, on the front of the website, sometimes we would ask a question. And I wonder if we're gonna pull the previous users, but while we're getting that data point, if maybe putting it on the website and seeing what kind of response we get as well.
Any other old or new business? Ms. Walker?
I feel like jolly good news here, but this is from our notes from our New Jersey school board. And it just said the US News and World Report announced on March 9th that the New Jersey education system is the best in the nation. So, yeah.
Any other old or new business? Okay, so we need to go into a closed session for just a few minutes. If anyone is willing to make that motion.
I'll second.
I think Rita beat you. All right, we'll be going into a closed session for just a few minutes. We will not be making any, we'll not be taking any votes when we come out.